Sermon on the Mount. Jesus starts, we talked about this last week, the Sermon on the Mount, talking about the character, talking about kingdom, what a kingdom person looks like, and the personal benefits that we receive when we live the way Jesus tells us to live. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn over sin, right? Blessed are the humble. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. We talked about all of that last week. And now we've had we took a break. We all ran off, did our things, went to work, did life. Now we've come back. It's been 7 days. You're like, yeah, I kind of remember that, or maybe I wasn't here for that, or whatever. But remember, what we're looking at today, this was not 7 days after Jesus said that. This was like 7 seconds, right? This is his Beatitudes were like his introduction, and then he goes into more of the sermon. So there's no break for his original listeners like it was for us. So that's why I put the scripture back up there. That was from last week, all the things we talked about. And when we live out these character traits, he said, oh, how blessed, oh, how happy you are. Like your life is so much better when you're a person of mercy and a person of humbleness, when you're thirsting and hungering after righteousness, when you mourn over your sin rather than try to excuse it or say, who are you to say I'm sinning, but rather grieve for your own sin. How happy you are. It changes your life. So like I said, directly after talking about how living these kingdom character traits, this lifestyle of a kingdom person, how it brings personal blessing and happiness to their lives, Jesus tells them that. The next sentence out of his mouth is, oh, by the way, living this kingdom lifestyle is also a blessing to the people around you. It's not just you. You're going to bless the entire community around you when you live the Jesus way. His next words are, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness or its taste, how can it be made salty? It's no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. He says, you are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand and gives light for all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Now, how many times have we, I'm going to say we, but me too, you and me, how many times have we read this text? This isn't like, oh, I've never heard that one. You probably heard this one before, right? How many times have you read this text and subconsciously twisted the words a little bit? So instead of Jesus making this declaration, hey, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. We change it into more of a command. You should be, in our mind, this is what we hear, this is how we translate it in our own minds. Oh, you should be the light. I better go be light. You need to go be salt in the world. I think we do it naturally because as followers of Christ, we want to do what God asks, and we read it and we kind of filter it and say, okay, I want to do that. I'm going to go do that. But that's not what he said. It's not what he said at all. And if you notice, I even did that on the video just now. I caught it as I was doing the editing, later on. I'm like, oh man, I need to go back and redo this. And I thought, how do I do that? I got to reset up the little, media area and reset up the video and re-record it and re-upload it to the computer, re-edit it and all this stuff. How about if I just publicly tell everybody I failed? All right, we're going to do that. Well, just embarrass myself a little bit because I did the same thing here. I said, hey, Jesus wants you to be light. He wants you to be salt. That's not what he said. Not what he said at all. He's not telling us to go out and try to be salt and try to be light. He's saying you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the earth. Say, you are salt. Don't become unsalty. You are light. Don't hide it. Just let it be. I haven't had to tell anybody that I have a light standing next to me today. You notice that right away. Some of you are like, what's that doing up here? You're like, well, it's just there. You don't have to showboat it. You don't have to, it just is, right? When light shines, it just shines. So this is not a challenge for you to become something you aren't today. This is not what Jesus is saying. It's a challenge to not hide what you're already called to be, who you already are. So what did Jesus mean when he said we are salt? The first thing most of us think of, obviously, in our context, well, you think about, well, you have salt on the table, salt in the spice section at the grocery store. Any restaurant you go to, every table has salt. It's everywhere, right? The big job of salt in our lives is to season the food. And he kind of gives that the idea of flavoring, like if it loses its flavor, what good is it, But in Jesus' day, it was much more than just a food seasoning. It was such a rare commodity. In many cases, Roman soldiers were actually paid in salt. At least part of their pay was in salt. The word salary that we use today comes from the Latin word salarium, which goes back to that time. It was, here's your salarium, here's your salt. The whole phrase, they're worth their salt, goes back to that time as well, that you're worth your pay. Hey, that person's really worth their pay. Hey, they're worth their salt. So it was a very valuable thing. Cash-wise, right? But even more importantly, in the first century, as well as in much of the world still today, salt is a preservative for meat, right? They put down an animal, and they had to do something to preserve the meat so it could be eaten later. They would rub salt all over the meat. It would kill the bad bacteria, help the good bacteria to flourish. I went to China several years ago, like 4 decades ago. Now, it's been a long time ago. Very hot, very humid area. There was raw meat like all over the place. It's hanging from the little storefronts. Just meat, just hanging there. It'd be tied on the back of some dude's motorcycle. He's weaving through traffic, all the exhaust. I'm like, oh man, that looks terrible. It's just half a hog just kind of laying there, It'd be slung over their shoulders. Now in a hot, humid, climate, you're walking around for hours with raw meat on you. It's going to decay. It's going to start getting smelly. It's going to go bad. But they put salt on it in order to preserve it. It would, without salt, it would immediately begin to rot. So salt preserves the meat and ultimately gives life to those who eat it. And I think what Jesus is saying here is that kingdom living, not only does it enhance people's lives, it enhances your life, as we talked about this week, it enhances the lives of people around you as well, but also it's a reminder that we live in a decaying world. Right? We are in a sinful world. The world has fallen. There is sin. We all have a nature to sin. We all have sinned. We all do sin. And when you have an entire planet full of people sinning, some people free will because they just want to, some because they reject God, they want to do their own thing. The Christian presence is a preservative in the culture. That when we live in this decaying world where death and sin reign, where the moral fabric of society is slowly rotting away, Christians by nature preserve our society. We are the moral compass of society. We show people how to live, how to interact with one another. Now, we're not perfect, but that's why he's saying, don't lose your saltiness. Keep living my way, right? Keep doing my thing. Christians preserve the sanctity of marriage and family and life. We protect children and women and widows and orphans. We raise the moral bar to keep society from self-destructing. Christians, simply by going to work each day, interacting in the marketplace, being involved in education and the arts and the labor force and doing all kinds of things, by living out godliness, the things we talked about last week in the Beatitudes, all those things, by living that out, it keeps society from decline and moral decay. We don't need legislation to do that. We don't need the government to do that. You do that by being salt, by just being a follower of Jesus in life. Jesus says, you are the salt of the world. If you lose your saltiness or don't live like a Christian is called to live, you have no value to the world and culture collapses around you. I think it's the failure of the church the last few decades that has led to the moral decline in our culture. You expect people who don't believe in God to act like people who don't believe in God. But when half the church out there is saying, hey, don't believe in God, don't live like God tells you to live, that's going to cause problems. So that's what we're in today in our world. He also says you're the light of the world. A light does one thing. What does it do? It shines, right? It's just on. It's just there. In a place of darkness, it brings a bit of light. You don't have to tell it to shine. Well, in this case, I turn it on. But if it's just light, it's just there, right? You don't have to try to shine. You just shine. Not you. It's not that you're all that special. It's that Jesus in you shines. When you live the Jesus way, that's what shines in our culture. And as it shines, it chases away the darkness. It illuminates the path before you. It warns of upcoming obstacles and dangers. It gives clarity and direction in life decisions. Light is always associated with God's favor and salvation and righteousness, and you read in Scripture, and we are the light shining in a very dark world, a very dark world. You don't have to scream at people. You don't have to shine the light in their face. You just be who Jesus calls you to be, and you are light in this culture. Have you ever noticed that everything gets worse at night? I think most of us probably experience that. You can have a great day. Everything's going wonderful. It's the best day ever in my life. And I don't know, 10 o'clock hits, 11 o'clock, whatever time it is. At some point, it hits, and all of a sudden, everything goes dark. What was a great day suddenly feels like your whole world is on fire. All of a sudden, you're thinking of all those bills that are due, and you're trying to figure out how to pay them, the relationship that you need to mend, the job you may have to save because it's in trouble, or there's issues going on at work. All of a sudden, you're afraid you're going to lose your house. They're going to take away your children. Your car is going to blow up, and the next time you start it, everyone on earth hates you. Everybody's out to get you. That seems to be what happens in the dark, and it just starts escalating. You start drilling down on that long list of things. Everything is wrong with the world, and maybe the things you shouldn't have said but did say, or things that someone else said that you wish they hadn't, or maybe they meant this, or maybe they meant that, and maybe they really do hate me. All those things that go through your mind, you know that it's just going to get worse, and where the night goes, it gets worse and worse and worse, and you just know your entire life is a complete dumpster fire. You're just like, what's going on here? That's where you get. At night. It can happen at daytime, but it's at night when that really hits. This past week, about 10 o'clock p.m., kind of winding down, thinking, man, maybe it's time for bed. Suddenly, my wife, Cheryl, gets a notification on her phone. Hey, there's an Apple AirTag. Someone's following you. She's like, what? And oh, give me that. Let me see. It's got to be a scam. I think everything's a scam. You know, I don't trust anything. It's like, don't do anything. Let me look at it. I'm looking at it. Oh, that's kind of legit. And it has a little thing. You push this button, you can hear the noise, and they won't know you're pressing the button, right? They don't know you're seeing who it is. And so I push the button, and it's like, we're upstairs. I'm pretty sure I hear something in the garage. I mean, it's not super loud, but I'm like, I don't know if I'm imagining it, whatever. Like, let's go. So we go down in the garage, and we do it again, and there it is. There's a sound. I'm like, what? We open the doors, we're open stuff, and trying to figure out. It's like, I think it's coming from under the car. This is really, really wild. So we call the kids. We're good, godly people, so we use Android products, not Apple. And our children both use Apple, so we call them up. Hey, what is this AirTag thing? What's up with that? And so Alan and Shanna come over, and Danielle and Thad are like on the video call, and then we're like all investigating. I mean, we're like spinning forever. I don't know how long it is. We're tearing the car apart. It's clearly coming from underneath the car. Alan's like way under there, like with flashlights, trying to find this. I keep hitting the button, and you can hear it. And like, where is the thing? What's going on? And it's on the thing. It says, well, if this isn't your tag, and you have a tag, you should call the police or go to the police station. And they're all like, you gotta call the police. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I call the police, and the two officers come up. And in the meantime, we're starting to conspire. Who hates us enough to track us? Because it even shows where she's been. And so it's like it's legit, right? It's like real. I'm like, someone's gonna kill me, right? Cheryl, they're gonna blow up your car. And like, why do they hate you so much? And so we're coming up with theories on that. And the police, of course, they come and they're asking questions like, well, is there anybody angry at you? And I said, well, everybody's angry at me. Like, have you seen my Facebook? Well, one of the officers said, man, I was a preacher's kid. I know how this works. Everybody hates you. You're right. And I said, yeah, thanks. So it could be someone at church. Watching you. And it's like, well, it could be someone at the school. Cheryl works at a school, and kids are kids. They should do kid things, right? But they had to spend some money, and we finally found it. Alan's down there, like in the middle of the car, and it's up in it's like it wasn't just thrown down there, right? It was definitely placed very purposefully on her car. We're trying to figure this out, and I say, I shouldn't joke with police officers, but I'm like, it could be like a holy war. There's other churches in town, and maybe they're trying to take me out. I don't know what's going on here. But it's like a few hours of throwing fuel on the, now it's the middle of the night, and like everybody's trying to kill us, and somebody wants to get rid of us, and I'm really glad you guys are laughing about that. It makes me feel good, secure about it's none of you. And finally we're like, well, we got it. They took it to the police station, and we're like, oh, well, we got to go to bed. We got to wake up in a few hours, and let's go to bed. And guess what happens? The sun comes up the next day, all right? And we get a text from Cheryl's brother, because, I put that there. Like, oh, that's really nice. Now, it was actually legitimate, because it's Cheryl's mom's car. And for those of you who didn't maybe see our Facebook, Cheryl's mom moved into assisted living yesterday. And she's had some memory issues, and the girls have been tracking her on her phone, because they have, Apple things, and they can do that. His thought was, because she'd get lost once in a while, and we could find her and go, save the day. But we thought, what if she leaves her phone at home and drives off? Who knows? So he put a tracker down there, and then she broke the hip, and the doctor's like, no more driving, and besides, you're going to get lost. So the doctor's like, don't drive. So we knew she would drive, so we, had to get the car. And then her brother's like, well, you drive the car around. I mean, got to keep it going. And so she's been driving Mom's car with her brother's tracker on it. And the scary thing is he placed that like in October. And it just told us this week. So we would have been dead anyway. Maybe it's time to go Apple. I don't know. Android got a little slow on the warning there. But point being, it was all funny, ha ha ha. I mean, we could laugh about it. That night, we really didn't know. Like, I was going to open the garage door. They're like, don't open the garage door. I mean, there's like, we got weapons, we're loaded. We're like, we're ready for whatever's coming, because someone's literally tracking us, So what was going to be the death of all of us became like, ha ha ha, the brother did it. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people live in that darkness 24 hours a day. I mean, their life is filled with darkness. It's a place of fear, a place of doubt, a place of confusion, a place of pain, a place of sorrow because of consequences from choices they've made in the past or other people have made. They're living their lives separate from God, and there's consequences to that, opposite of what Jesus said last week in the Beatitudes. Some live in addiction, some live in bondage and brokenness, and they have no idea how to get free from that. It's just darkness, and they feel trapped. Often all they need is a little light shown in their world, a little direction, maybe a little help to let them see clearly, maybe a little help to say, there's hope on the horizon. It can get better. Let's show you the way. When you live like a kingdom person, you're the light that this world needs. You're the light that they have to see, a light that cannot be hidden, a light that cannot be put out, a light that simply says, there's a better way. And his way is Jesus. And he offers forgiveness, and he offers grace, and he offers direction, and he offers everything that you need. It's all right in the Scripture. We don't have to pretend as Christians that we are light. We are light. We don't have to put on a t-shirt that says, I'm light. No, you already are light. We just have to live as Jesus says to live and let that example of that life lead the way. I was talking to a pastor this week who's getting ready to retire, and so he's been doing this a while, and he said, it was kind of a random call. Like, we weren't expecting to call each other, but I called him about something, and he said, I've been watching you for 40 years. I'm like, what? Sorry. Sorry. I'm sure I let you down a lot of ways. He goes, no, I've always been inspired. You've always been an encouragement to me. And he said, I wish we would have interacted more over time. I think we could have done some things. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why we didn't. It's a couple hours away from each other, whatever. But I'm thinking, I haven't done anything special. There's nothing, it's not me. It's not like I'm some great guy or anything. I haven't marketed myself or written a book, 40 Ways to Live Like Dan. I mean, nobody would buy that. I mean, nobody wants that. I've just lived my life, right? Just like you do. You just live your life. I read, I follow Jesus. I read every day. How can I be more like Jesus and do everything I can continually to change and transform and be as much like Jesus as possible? That's it. That's all. And he's just been watching. I thought, wow, that's kind of a cool thing for him to say. I think that's what Jesus is talking about. You just live your life. Not the way you want, the way Jesus says to. Hopefully that as you get older becomes how you want, right? That's the idea. You just live the Christian life. And as you do that, you are salt in a decaying world. You are light in a dark world. When we grieve and mourn over our own sin rather than defend it and excuse it, when we humble ourselves and have a consistent pattern of humbling ourselves before God, desiring to live his way, when we hunger and thirst for righteousness, not assume we just are. When we are merciful to those around us who don't deserve it, that's the whole idea of mercy. When we're pure in heart, and as we talked about last week, that is pure in motive, right? That the things I do are not to get attention or to get payback. It's just because this is what God's called me to do. I'm just serving you because I love Jesus, pure in heart. When we're peacemakers in this world full of conflict, we just are salt. We just are light. Jesus tells us to feed the hungry and clothe the naked and help the poor. And so every 2 weeks we go into homeless camps and we do all those things. We feed and we clothe and we help and we encourage and build people up. And usually take a few pictures and I'll throw them up on social media. And I struggled with it in the beginning because I don't want it to be like, look what we're doing, we're so cool, we're helping homeless, you're not, nano. That's not what it is. I thought maybe this would be a little bit of encouragement for others. And it turns out that's how it has been. We'll put it on the neighbor app, like the local thing, and just the comments and the views. And that's what we had to put a box out from, because people are like, well, how can we be a part of that? I'm like, oh, that'd be great, because the first few weeks we were like going, we're kind of out of stuff. I mean, it's kind of expensive to fund all this every time. And all of a sudden people are like, well, we have coats, we have blankets, we have food, we have whatever. And that thing every week, 2 or 3 times I've got to pull stuff out of that box and bring it here from the community who just has been encouraged from the light and the salt as they see someone's out there feeding the hungry. I want to be a part of that too. I mean, I was going to just throw this away. I've heard that many times, but I didn't want to, but I didn't know what else to do, so I was just going to throw it away. But do you think they can use these boots? Yes, they can. Think they can use these blankets? Yes, they can. Someone had rugs. Do you think they want rugs? I said, you'd be surprised. They were gone quickly when we took them out. Someone bring rugs. And it's been so cool because just a few photos. I never asked for anything, but people will ask, can we, right? So then people know what's going on. They see the needs. It leads to donations, and people are being blessed. It blesses the givers because they're doing literally something helpful. It blesses the receivers because they're receiving something that they really need. It blesses those of us who go out to the homeless camps because we just get to be in the front row to see what God's doing. And we're not nothing special about those of us that go. We just happen to be the ones that are there and available on a Saturday morning. We build relationship with the folks out there. It enhances what happens. It enhances the entire Des Moines metro area. And we're not the only ones doing it. There's other churches doing it too, which is awesome, right? It's not a competition to who gives more or does better. It's like we're all in this together, helping people who need help. It is salt and light simply by doing what Jesus said. It's not that complicated. It's not that complicated. I always like to leave you with some type of action step. Here's the scripture, here's what you really need to do, here's something you can work on, a growth point or something like that. And I guess if I were to do that this week, it's kind of broad because it's just keep learning the Jesus way. Keep digging into the scripture. Keep an active prayer life. Keep knowing and studying and learning what it means to live Jesus and do it. And do it. And do it. Have a Jesus-centered marriage. Have a Jesus-centered home and family. Be a parent that's Jesus-centered. Act like Jesus at work. Act like Jesus when you're out and about. Act like Jesus when you're with your friends. Act like Jesus to your enemies. You act like Jesus, and that just naturally makes you salt, a preservative, a flavoring as well, and light in this world. You will enhance your own personal life. You will enhance the world around you. And as we do that individually, it helps you. As we do that collectively, the entire world becomes better. Jesus had a pretty good plan.